loose parts and why they're so important to early years development, please feel free to jump in and ask questions. I really want it to be as interactive as possible. So you can ask questions, you can make comments, you can either pop your hand up or you can put something in the chat, anything at all. It's really fine. It's not just me giving a lecture on loose parts. It's a sort of definitely an interactive thing tonight. So let's just recap. Let's have a think about what we know already about loose parts. So, and I've used, to support this, I've used some evidence from the early evidence store, which I think you probably are all familiar with, but we can put a link in the chat, couldn't we, Damon, if anyone's interested. And at the top of the chat, if you scroll all the way up, is a link to a Padlet document that I've made, which gives you some sort of ideas about how you can have loose parts in your setting, some practical ideas of how I do things in my setting and how other people use them, plus a few nice quotes about loose parts. And there's a fantastic poster, which we'll come to in a little while, which has a good sort of list, which is almost like a list of what you could use as loose parts. Okay, so let's have a think. When we're thinking about children's development in the early years, we're thinking of it in a holistic way, aren't we? So the children we're working with don't learn about maths and then learn about English and then learn about history. It's all in one big learning experience, isn't it? And loose parts can really support all the things that we're trying to achieve with young children in the early years, particularly when we're thinking of things like characteristics of effective learning, which is how you learn. And I'm sure you're all familiar with that already. And things like self-regulation, executive function, which if anyone's not sure what that is, it's the ability for you to change your actions rather than letting instinct step in. So it's your ability to put the brakes on before you act, to think before you act. So resilience, executive function, critical thinking, being confident in your own ideas and being willing to give something a go and trying again if something fails. Now, all those things really fit well with the idea of loose parts, because loose parts are what we would term open-ended resources. For anyone who came on the enabling environment session that we did, will be familiar with that term, but I'll just recap it for anyone that isn't. You could have open-ended resources or closed resources. So an example of a closed resource would be something like a doll's house or a toy garage or a toy airport, something along those lines. You know, those Fisher-Price ones would be a perfect example. You know, lovely toys, but they're only ever going to be an airport, a garage, or a doll's house. They're never going to be anything else. They're just a closed resource that only serves one purpose. But loose parts are an open-ended resource. So there's no limit to what an open-ended resource can be. It's the only limit is the child's imagination. As I say on the Padlet, when you have a look at the Padlet in a moment, you'll see there are some amazing things that children have done with loose parts. And because we want to encourage children to try out their ideas, to be critical thinkers, to be resilient, and to have confidence in their ideas, using loose parts enables all of these things. And when we look at the early years education store, there's evidence that shows that children who set their own goals and set themselves challenges and try challenges have much stronger mental health, they're much more resilient, and they're much more able to cope with disappointment or frustration because they've already been practicing that while they've been using loose parts. And loose parts are super fun because you're able to do whatever you want with them. They can be absolutely anything. So if we're thinking of an open-ended resource, a really simple idea for that would be something like a box. We've all got boxes, haven't we, in our settings? And a box can be a garage or a doll's house or an airport, but it could also be a boat. It could be a treasure chest. It could be somewhere you could climb in and hide inside it. It could be something you want to paint, that you want to transform, that you want to use in construction. It is just endless, isn't it? We all know that already, but I think maybe sometimes we're not familiar with the terminology. And for some childminders who are new to the idea of loose parts, it can be a little bit daunting. They might think that you have to use things in a certain way, or have certain types of resources. Now, what I'm trying to show you tonight is that loose parts are cheap, that they are usually very cheap or free. And for childminders especially, we're working in fairly small settings, aren't we? They do what I would call double duty, because you don't need to have a doll's house and a garage and an airport, because you've got loose parts. They can be anything, and it's very, very simple to do. So what I'm going to do is ask some questions and hopefully get some feedback from you. And we can also use some of the photos. Damon's going to scroll through some of the lovely photos we've been given, which will give us a sort of an idea of how people are using loose parts in their settings already. But I'd like to start off with the question, what are loose parts? So in your settings at the moment, if you are using loose parts, can you give me a couple of examples? Maybe something that's big and something that's small, just to get people started on the idea of what a loose part could be. You can either like shout it out. Just
Toilet roll holders are a good one that we've found.
Sorry, say that again.
Toilet roll holders, like the inside bits, the children love building with them, and then they start balancing and putting things inside them. So we found they're really good.
Yeah, good idea, and free.
Yeah,
and it doesn't
and go
matter.
through a lot of them.
Yeah, don't we all? But also, that's perfect because they're free, and also they're environmentally friendly, because when they're ruined, you just recycle them, don't you? You know, if they get wet or whatever, you finish with them and some more come along. So that it's perfect, and they've got so many different choices. I can see that something in the chat there. Let me just have a quick look. Sorry, bear with me while I scroll down. Right, yes, Sarah saying pine cones and twigs, perfect, exactly. Buttons, open pots to fill, pine cones and tubes. Yeah, definitely things like any pots with lids especially. You know, if you feel able to use glass, go with glass jars, they're great. But if not, any type of containers are very good. We'll get to that in a moment, because we're going to talk about how to start off with loose parts. So you can see, oh, lovely, Louise has got something there. Thank you, Louise. Parcel packaging. Yes, brilliant. Parcel packaging is fantastic, isn't it? And we all have loads of packages delivered nowadays, don't we? So anything like that's really, really cool. That sort of molded cardboard. It can be anything, can't it? It might look like a castle to you, Louise, but for the children, it might not, might it? It could be something completely different. Planks of wood, yes, lovely. I've got lots of planks of wood. Guttering, yes. Curtain rings, perfect. Laura, that's a really good thing. Handmade Play-Doh. There's definitely a crossover between malleable materials and what you might call like hard loose part materials. So using Play-Doh that's just, you can use it in any way that you want, that it's not prescribed. This is what we're trying to get away from the idea of a little bit. Things like having Play-Doh and then having a range of loose parts with it would make a really good invitation for children, wouldn't it, or provocation. Lids on food pouches. Oh yeah, those little plastic lids, they're great because they offer lots of opportunities, don't they, for sorting, or you can use them. My lot quite often use things like that for money in their role play games. Plastic bottles, yes, perfect. You can do all sorts of things with a plastic bottle, can't you? So all these things, one thing they all have in common actually is they are really, really cheap. None of us have got tons of money, or if we have, lucky you, but most of us haven't. And quite a lot of us are also trying to be more environmentally friendly, aren't we? So when you think about reusing things like this is perfect. absolutely perfect for loose parts play. And I think, Damon, could we show the poster from Play Scotland, please? Scotland has quite a big focus on loose parts play, and they've produced this really good poster, which I think is almost like a tick list of what you could have, just to give you a bit of a start, really. So look, this shows you that anything is loose parts play. Ribbons and feathers, egg cartons and acorns, shells and leaves, wool and string. Yeah, and also this ties in really well with the idea of schemas. I've got a little one at the moment who has a connecting schema and loves to tie everything together with wool all around the garden. And then I've got another child who really likes to cut up strings. So
now. No.
Oh, is that someone contributing or not going to have a bath? Yeah, so all these things you can see on here are things you've probably already got in your setting. They're just super easy to obtain. They offer a world of opportunity and a world of experience for children that doesn't involve a prescribed or an ending that has to be a particular thing. As I say here, promotes curiosity and imagination through play. Okay, so let's have a think about issues with loose parts. Has anyone got any concerns about using loose parts in their setting? And if you have, either shout it out or pop it in the chat, and we'll try and work out together solutions as to how you can adapt loose parts to fit in your setting. Could we have the pictures scrolled through again, please, Damon? Just wait for that. Lovely. Thanks, Julia. Yeah, small pieces and choking. So has anyone got a solution for that? How would you get around that? Anyone like to
So when we went to the loose parts group, we obviously were given our bags with buttons and stuff in them. So what I've done is I ensure when I've got the buttons out that only the older children are playing with them like safely, and the younger ones have like all the bigger, like the cardboard boxes, obviously when I'm doing the activities with them and stuff, and when they've got it all out, I'm sitting with them, taking part with them as well.
Yeah, perfect. And I think there's a couple of very similar things in here. Choking hazard, but I make sure I'm vigilant and I supervise at all times. And where are we? And how to store them, yeah, and supervising. When I've offered it, my older kids don't seem interested. Oh, okay, Karen, if you don't mind, we're coming back to that question in a moment. If that's okay? So let's think about the small things. So when some of you might know that I'm also a mentor on the Experts and Mentors program, and that was one of the questions that came up a few times when I've been talking to childminders about loose parts. Loose parts doesn't necessarily mean small parts, and you know your children and your setting best, don't you? Some of us can be confident that we've got children that aren't going to be eating things or swallowing things or putting things up their nose, and then others we know we could not have a tray of buttons out with them, and that's fine. You have to just sort of do that risk assess in the moment. You know, I've got these children today, so I'm not going to have those tiny little beads out because I know that's going to be a risk, but we can have the larger stuff out. So I think when you look at some of these pictures that are coming up, some of these are quite big things, aren't they? The box, the rope, the string. So these are corks and lollipop sticks. Depending on the child, you might want to be careful with corks possibly, but most children are okay with that type of thing, aren't they? But yeah, if you're not sure about having small bits in your setting, just don't have them until you're confident enough to have them. That's absolutely fine. So yeah, you can see this in this picture here. Look, we've got at the bottom right hand side, he's driving with the Play-Doh over the with the trucks over the Play-Doh. That's a type of loose part as well. So but it can be, obviously, you might have children that want to eat Play-Doh. You have to work around the children that you've got in your setting, don't you? I have a child who constantly eats Play-Doh, so I make salt-free Play-Doh, and then if they eat it, well, you know, it's not the end of the world, is it? But again, I have a lot of buttons that I use in small with loose
I'm
parts.
listening to this.
But
What did you think?
I don't the small buttons, if I had very young children here, I just wouldn't put the small buttons out, and I've got some really big chunky buttons instead. So there are ways around that. We'll come to that in a moment, actually, about the different types of how to start off offering. So look here, she's got the logs out, hasn't she? These little log things. They're big enough for little babies to have, but also still interesting enough for older children as well, who might have the manual dexterity to move things and stack things like that. Let's have a look. Oh, there's another one playing with this was one of our networking sessions at Fear Church, where we had invitations to play, and we had all sorts of loose part stuff going on. So yeah, I think you really do have to risk assess and just know your children really well, which you all know already, don't you? But it is important to think loose parts doesn't mean small parts. It doesn't have to be tiny little things. This is from my setting, so this was these jewels, and there've been all sorts of things. Sometimes they're money, sometimes they're sorted out into shapes or sizes or made into patterns, or they signify something in a game, you know, in a role play game, some sort of superpower that someone has if they've got a particular color jewel. And this little one here, look, she's using, this is a good example actually, isn't it? Larger loose parts. And all the loose parts you can see in the background here, none of them are small. So you could think about introducing larger loose parts if you've got little ones. And if you're not comfortable with it to start with, then I would definitely suggest going with things that you're comfortable with, because we all know as childminders, we might want to be there with the children all the time, but this isn't my setting where they're using some very big loose parts like pipes and stuff. But also, you know, you might have to take a child to the toilet quickly, or you might, the doorbell might go. So if you're not sure, just don't use those things. This is a good example, isn't it? Wool, tape, that type of thing. So it's a matter of curating the loose parts to fit the children in your setting. I think if you were in a nursery, it'd be slightly different because you have children segregated by age, don't you? Whereas in childminding settings, usually we've got a mixed age group, haven't we? And so it's a balance between having things that are challenging enough for the older children and still safe for the younger ones. But really, I mean, so this one is at my setting as well. This is that little one putting chalk down the pipe. You can see the water at the back coming out of the water butt that's washing the chalk down into the puddle. He spent ages doing that, absolutely ages. And actually wet chalk's a really nice thing to use on a patio or something afterwards. So yes, thank you for that. I'm just going to see if I've got anything else in the chat that I haven't read. Okay. Our next question was how to offer loose parts, and that's we've seen some of the ideas, haven't we, on here, where people have used some really creative ideas like tiered stands, or the thing I use the most is like a fruit bowl that's tiered, that's got all these small bits in, which works quite well, and it's easy to transport around. Outside, for instance, in my setting, I have a corner of the garden where I stack up things like the crates and the cable reels and stuff like that. But I would also say, don't feel like you've got to have 100 cable reels and 50 pipes. You might only need 2 of these things or 3 of them, you know. So think about the size of your setting and think about what you can realistically offer, especially indoors. I don't know, we've all got, my setting's particularly small, so I don't keep tons and tons of stuff out because it just wouldn't be viable. But you can still offer a range of things. I think it was there was the picture we saw just now with the wool, and that type of thing in the magazine rack. And that's perfect. It's quite small actually, isn't it? But it's still offering enough choice for children to be able to go and pick things up and move them around. Has anyone else got any ideas about how you store? So I see this is one that someone, I don't know who that is, sorry, but your name is just Zoom user. And whether to store them separately or how to present them to children. So I would say that really depends on how much space you have. If you've got a lot of space, lovely, yes, use separate containers or baskets.
Hold on.
If you haven't got a lot of space, I think someone might have be having a chat in the background. Would it be possible to just mute yourself for a moment? Thank you. If you haven't got a lot of space, don't worry, just make it smaller. As we say, use something like a tiered basket from a charity shop or something like that. You can just start off really small and simple. And as far as presenting to the children, that sort of leads us on to our, not our next question, but I can swap them around actually. One of the things sometimes people ask is, my children don't know what to do with them, which is similar to what you've said there, isn't it, Karen? When I've offered it to my older kids, they don't seem interested and keep asking, what must I do? Well, I'd suggest this is children that haven't had the experience of working with loose parts. And so they're expecting an adult to explain things to them. Now, you would hope that a child would be able to see these fabulous resources and just go with them. But we all know that children come to us with different experiences and that type of thing. So they might just not have experienced that before. I would suggest the way forward there is modelling. So for instance, if you've got the Play-Doh out and some loose parts like we saw in the picture just now, just sit nearby and do your own Play-Doh creation, talking about what you're using and joining things together and using the loose parts, but not doing it yourself, not telling the children this is what you've got to do, because it's completely up to them really, isn't it? Once they get the hang of it, they'll really go for it. Karen, it might be worth, I don't know what you've got as far as loose parts go, but try some of the bigger outdoor things maybe if they're older children, because older children really like the challenge, don't they, of carrying heavy things and trying to fit things together. There was a picture earlier on. I don't know, are we able to go back to the pictures, Damon, please? Of the children in my setting, and they had all those pipes. And what they were trying to do was transport water from the fountain in one side of the garden to the mud pit on the other side of the garden. And they are deliberately kept separate. There's similar things here, look. So maybe think about offering loose parts on a bigger scale, or things like this when you're in the mud kitchen. Flowers, petals are a really good loose part. Has anyone else got any suggestions for how Karen can introduce loose parts to children who aren't really sort of sure about what to do? While anyone's thinking that, I'm just going to read through. Shannon says, I use a shallow basket for my small loose parts. That's perfect. You know, anything you've got actually, if you've got little bowls or baskets or anything. Really good free book called Open-Ended Play on Community Playthings about introducing, scrolled up, about introducing open-ended resources. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's a really good one. Perhaps we'll see if we can get a link. Perhaps Damon will be able to put a link in for us for that. So if we could just hold on this picture for a second, please, Damon. This, excuse my awfully messy garden. So this is the picture I'm talking about. Now, sometimes older children, so this was in the school holidays with some of the older children, really enjoy that challenge of joining things together, stacking things up, carrying around big things like crates. I don't have a huge amount of things. I think I've got 3 crates. I've probably got 6 or 7 pipes, but it's enough for my setting. And they're actually utilising some of the other things as a loose part. So the little slide is being used as a loose part here as well. And they worked on this all afternoon because they had to work out how to join these pipes together so that the water would flow down into the mud pit on the other side, and of course you can see from here that the pipe's pointing upwards, and there was quite a lot of challenging thinking and working as a team and negotiating and coming up with ideas. Thank you, Damon. Which was really brilliant to see. And look, even the baby got involved. She was in a supervisory capacity, obviously, but she still got involved, and she's still learning from what they're doing. She's still taking that all in, isn't she? So yeah, I think it's completely up to you, Karen, but I would suggest that might be worth a try if you've got older children. When you, oh, hang on, I'm so sorry, I'm just scrolling up. When you say there's a need for close-ended toys alongside open-ended, I have lots of big Fisher-Price type toys, or would you be inclined to remove them? I would say, Zoom user, whoever you are, I would say that is completely up to you. And there's no reason why you can't introduce both. You might find that some of the small parts, loose parts, sorry, find their way into those big Fisher-Price type toys, and that's really great actually, because that means the children are starting to use them almost as a loose part in themselves, aren't they? It really depends. I can only go from my own experience. So I used to have a lot of those type of toys. I've been childminding for 25 years now, and about 5 years ago, I started to move towards being a curiosity approach setting. And as part of that, I removed some of those toys, and I just put them upstairs out of the way and waited to see whether the children wanted them back. And actually, now I don't have anything like that, and it's all loose parts, or what I would call authentic resources like teapots and that type of thing. Like you, I only have a very, very small setting. When you look on the Padlet, you'll be able to see some examples of how I do it, but we all do things differently, don't we? You might have a slightly different pedagogy to me. I might have a different one to someone else, and we all work slightly differently. If you think the children are using those more traditional toys and are getting a lot of play value out of them, what we would call affordance, do they afford a lot of opportunity? So if your children are getting a lot of play value from them, and you're seeing lots of really rich observations from that, then great, go with it. If you feel like they're just in the corner gathering dust and taking up valuable space in your smaller setting, then maybe it's time to try and think about how a different way of offering what are in essence the same type of resources, because as we said, open-ended can be anything, can't it? So I would, yeah, I would probably just give it a go and just see what happens. I was very reluctant to get rid of Happy Land, really reluctant, because it had cost me a lot of money, but no one ever asked for Happy Land back. So I realised I'd spent a lot of money on something that they weren't using anyway. But again, that is just my setting. If I'd be very happy to talk to you separately about that, if that's any help at all. I can put my email in the chat, and maybe we could delve into that a little bit differently. So Damon's put the link to the book on there. Thank you for that. Okay, Shannon, I've taken a lot of my closed resources away, and I've seen a huge difference in the play. The children are now the children are now doing, excuse me, and it's wonderful to see the learning outcomes have been rewarded. That's really, really interesting, Shannon. Thank you. Barbara, I took my kitchen away and I haven't really noticed, and are finding different things and ways to play with. Excellent. That's a really good example, and actually might go back well with the Zoom user mystery person who's asking a similar question. Maybe just try taking it away. So in my setting, you can see I have got a mud kitchen. This is a picture from my setting. But in this instance, the children decided to use a cable reel to cook. And I don't have a play cooker, but quite often the thing they use to cook is underneath the coffee table in the conservatory, because that's where they mixing something up and they put things underneath. That's what their cooker is, and that's fine if they want to use that as their resource. Okay, so I think I had one more question, which is, where do you get your loose parts? So has anyone got any ideas or any suggestions of where you get your loose parts, bearing in mind that a lot of the things we've talked about are free or virtually free. So feel free to chat about it or pop it in the chat or shout out and we'll have a look. So Shannon said, I did the same thing and we've done more cooking than before. Excellent. Yeah. Sonia, I totally agree. Charity shops are just the best. Car boot sales, yeah, definitely. So your own kitchen covers, yeah, excellent. Yeah, of course, because that's really important, that type of stuff, isn't it? And actually, it's what I would also term an authentic resource because they're things that are real. So, like a child's plastic play food, for instance, will never be as interesting to a child as real food or not necessarily food in play, but mud or mixing up sand or mixing up gloop, something like that will always hold more play value. I would suggest, and therefore more play value means better outcomes. So Sophie said, I ordered some bits from Amazon like bobbins, curtain hooks, and small wooden people. Yeah, definitely. Do you know, one of the things I find that always gets used, and they're always in charity shops, are napkin rings. People must buy them for weddings or something because they're like so fancy and they're just a brilliant loose part resource. You can stack them on things, you can put things through them, they can be treasure. They're brilliant. So napkin rings are my big takeaway from this. Free pages on Facebook. I agree, Marina. Yeah, the people are always giving stuff away, aren't they? Walks in the wood. Yes, packaging. Ask your parents to give you any interesting packaging, especially I would suggest at Christmas time when people get things like sort of toiletry sets. They're always in some nice packaging, aren't they? Anything like that's really good. The rest is recyclable stuff like boxes, lolly sticks and corks. Yes. You know someone that's got a lot of corks, grab those corks. Things like Pringles tubes. Just, who hasn't got some Pringles tubes laying around? That type of thing is perfect. Oh, thanks, Lara. The Childminders Network sessions have been great as we've collected a variety of resources and loose parts. Excellent, yeah. And, we saw in the pictures some from your setting, aren't they? And they've just been really, really good. Try Temu. They have some super resources that are quite cheap if you don't mind the wait. Oh, okay. So, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just endless, really, isn't it? People quite often ask me where I've got things like, oh, is it possible to have the pictures going again, please, Damon? People quite often ask me where I get things like cable reels. Well, I'm lucky enough to have a child-minding dad who's an electrician, but nearly everyone will know someone who is an electrician. Just ask them to look out for them for you. I'm quite lucky. My husband is a sign maker. I have all sorts of random stuff at his place. So he sometimes brings home weird random things. And they're great as well. We like weird and random. But yeah, ask your parents to bring stuff along. If you've got a parent who's a plumber, ask for pipes. If they've got it here, look, if you've got a parent who has been doing some carpentry work, ask for the offcuts. If you've got someone that's had something delivered, if you're going past someone's house in the morning and they've got a cardboard box outside waiting to be recycled, ask them if you can take it home. Because all these things are free, and why not take advantage of all this free stuff? And it's really sending a good message to the children as well, isn't it, that we're using free things, that we're recycling things. Yeah, that's a good point, Lisa. B&Q, and I think actually you can join a B&Q club, can't you? Which where you can go along and collect free things. Unfortunately, in our part of Essex, we don't have a scrap store anymore. But if you're lucky enough to have a scrap store nearby, that's perfect. But then again, you can just, if you know anyone that works in any type of manufacturing that has anything that they don't need, bits of rope, cardboard tubes, these type of cone things. If you know anyone that works in a fabric shop, there's sort of huge bobbins they have. They're brilliant. This is a good storage solution, isn't it? And I think it's a really good way of offering loose parts. And as we were saying about the risk assessment thing, this one's got pom-poms. if you had very young children you knew were going to eat the pom-poms, you just wouldn't put the pom-poms in there. You'd put something else in instead, wouldn't you? You might put stack of paper cups or anything really. You know, you have to tailor it really to your children. I think in that last picture, you don't need to go back, Damon, but in the last picture was also a baby milk powder can. If you've got any babies that are on formula milk that comes in cans, ask them parents to save those cans because they're brilliant. They will eventually go rusty and you'll have to get rid of them, but they're really good in the meantime. Oh, Kerry, I have heard about this Thurrock play store. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a long bike ride for me from Colchester. Yeah, I've heard about that. And there used to be an online scrap store where you could buy things, but I don't think that's actually selling things at the moment. But look around your area and see whether there's anything like that. Or ask, as Marina was saying, ask on the free groups, not just looking out for stuff people are giving away, but also ask on the free groups. I'm really looking for large cardboard tubes, or has anyone got any, whatever it is you're looking for, old pipes or anything like that. So it can be really, really simple to introduce these things. And I think I can see from all these fantastic pictures, it's just that you've done such an amazing job already. But I know some of you on here tonight were new to Loose Parts. So I'm hoping that's given you some ideas about how you can do things in a simple way. I think we are finishing at 1:45, aren't we? So if everyone's all right, I'm just going to read out a couple of these quotes that people sent me, because otherwise the time will have gone past and I won't have had a chance to do them. First one is, what I have seen are the infinite opportunities for language development, creative thinking, having a voice, problem solving. We have one child in our setting who is in a selective mute, and Loose Parts Play played a part in helping her to speak. We made her our own Loose Parts kit to carry with her, and it gave her a sense of control. That is really an amazing thing. And actually, that's true, isn't it? Children are in control, and it being in control strengthens their resilience and their mental health, and gives them a sense of agency over their decision to have to play. And another quote here I've got is, even in small settings, you can have it freely available. That's definitely true, as we've seen tonight. Some of those things can be, you can just scale it back down, be really, really small. Or you can go outside and find things in the woods, you know, that's still Loose Parts Play. You can go to the beach. Last week we were at the beach. We made some fantastic patterns in the sand with stones and shells, and it was really good fun. Since the session, I've used the goodie bag resources. I had odd loose parts before, but now they are out every day as an invitation, which is fantastic, isn't it? Bear with me, I've got to read the others off my phone because Damon just sent them to me. We have Loose Parts mornings, and I've added resources to what you had given me, and I'm planning on developing a Loose Parts area within my setting so the children can access them daily and use their imagination. That is just amazing and brilliant feedback. Thank you. We've used wooden small parts to thread and make patterns with. That's great. I've now got a creation station. That sounds fab. With loose parts that children can construct or deconstruct, sorting, mixing paper on the floor and lots of loose parts, pens and pencils, mud kitchen outside with lots of pots and pans, Play-Doh, making and using loose parts to play with. I have a variety of natural resources available for children to access freely. I have lots of baskets set out in my cabin full of interesting loose parts, which is inviting the children to explore and creates an enabling environment. I also put out a long sheet of paper from the roll we got free, which I added interesting mark making items, e.g. crayons, pens, sorry, my cat's decided to join us, twigs, leaves, string, scissors, and the children love to express themselves with these resources. I added loose parts into the mud kitchen, pine cones, sticks, shells, leaves, loose parts in everyday play. Children have used the items for patterns and teasers and lots of fine motor skills. I've put a basket of cardboard tubes, plastic bottles, pots, and paper in my playroom to encourage the children to sort through. And they've been very creative with the resources, making trumpets and practicing their fine motor skills, taking the bottle lids on and off and having fun exploring the different materials. I've also got lots of bits and bobs that the children can move and carry around the setting, and I've made some treasure baskets. So all that feedback is just amazing, and it shows that you've all taken on board what we've been doing at Claire's sessions. When you look at Claire's things, you can see none of the stuff that she has is expensive or fancy or valuable in any way at all, is it? So I hope that's been helpful. If anyone's got any last few questions anyone wants to ask, or hang on, I'm just going to put my email address in there in case anyone wants to talk about things further or anything like that at all. I'm very happy to have a chat individually with people. But thank you so much to everyone for sharing all of your fantastic photos and your quotes and chipping in tonight with your questions. I hope we've sort of allayed some of the concerns about how using loose parts, but also I would say don't stress over it. Don't make it a big thing you have to have. Just have some, yeah, thank you, Eve. So have some small bits. Just have a few small bits. Eve, if you want to, the other online sessions have been recorded, so I'm sure Damon could pop a link on there for you. And they all tie in quite nicely actually, because they're about enabling agency and you know, having an enabling environment as well. So yeah, hopefully it's helped to sort of reassure you that don't make a big thing of it. Just start off with boxes and start off with some very, very simple things. Look at the Padlet. So the Padlet document is right at the top. I'm going to see if I can pop it in again. Oh, there it is there, look. And if anyone's interested, email me and I can send you to the Padlet I've also made about enabling environments. I can't share my whole Padlet on here because we have to be politically neutral, and there's some stuff from the Department for Education on there at the moment. So I have to, I can't share the whole thing, but I can share it into bits individually to you. Thank you, Karen. I'm glad you got some ideas. And thank you, Michelle. It's really nice for everyone to join us, and been really interesting to talk to you. And I can't say how much it helps to have a bit of feedback. That's really interesting. We're going to be running these sessions for every type of session we've done at the childminding groups. So we'll be doing one on our experiences with paint and malleable materials, and we'll also be doing one on clay, which was our latest session that we've just had in Colchester and will be rolled out to all of you, and hopefully some of you can make those sessions as well. But yeah, thank you so much. And they all tie in together, all these things. They're all about moving away from telling children how to use resources and letting children explore and be creative themselves. So that one question about children not quite knowing how to use them, try modeling, try being next to them, doing your own thing, but also try having some bigger things outside, I would say, where they're not under any pressure to make a particular thing. They know that they just want to climb or jump off things or join things together. Okay.
I was just going to, if I just add, Kim, so I was going to say, I said about there be a little free gift for everyone. So I have put it in the chat, but if you just email me and tell me what group you will be at, give me your name and what group you'll be at, and then I'll make sure we've got a nice couple of books to give you. So if you just do that, I'll put my email address in the chat. It's reachoutsph@thebarnnurseryschool.com. But yeah, just email me and then I'll make sure. And if you're not going to a group, then if you put your address, then I'll get it posted. Thank
Lovely.
you.
Thanks, Damon. Thank you for being our IT support. And Lisa, do you have anything you need to add before we finish? gone already.
She's there somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, thanks ever so much, Kim. I thought that was really good. I think that's brilliant. The
Oh,
way everyone was taking part, that was a really good
yeah.
session.
Lovely. It's lovely to see that people are using those resources that we've sort of given out, and also just not even using those